You
I just did
started it. Great,
yeah.
thank you. Okay, all right, welcome. 2026 HTCC information session. I wanted to start off and introduce the team and just recognize the folks here at CHFA that participate in the HTCC, reviewing applications, quarterly reports. It's definitely a team effort. All the folks listed here do HTCC in addition to many other things, primarily reviewing LIHTC applications and closing loans. So it's definitely a group effort with the administration of HTCC here at CHFA. So first I wanted to introduce the program administration team. Deborah Alter, she is the Senior Program Officer of Program and Administration. She's here today as well. She'll help monitor the chat, so feel free to drop any questions in the chat. I'm Colette Slover, I'm the HTCC Program Manager. Stephen Norris is here as well, and Trayvon Perry, and Ryan Steck, who is one of the newest members of our HTCC group. And then we also have our architectural and construction services team, which is led by Jennifer Landau, our senior program officer. Leslie Malaga is here as well today. And
Colette, you went on mute.
okay, thank. Okay. Yeah, let me know. I just saw it change to mute on its own too, so I don't know if someone hit mute all, but yeah, just let me know if you can't hear me again. Again, we're here with our ACS Architectural and Construction Services team. That's Jennifer Landau. We have Leslie Malaga here today, as well as Eric Grutner, Peter Kaczynski, Haral Parak, and Tanya Rivera Concepcion, who are staff that participate in application reviews. Okay, so for the agenda today, we will cover an overview of the program. We'll provide program updates. Our ACS team will review any updates and reminders to the program this year. We'll cover application rating and ranking, points worksheet updates, application, HTCC process and timeline. We'll discuss maintaining compliance after an award is received. We'll go over SharePoint, which is the site that we use to upload and submit applications, as well as a brief overview of the consolidated application, which is the Excel workbook that you need to complete to submit an application. We'll go over application preparation tips and provide some resources and have time for question and answers. I did mention that we have Deb monitoring the chat, so if you want to drop any questions in the chat, you're welcome to do so. We'll try and get those answered along the way. If you want to ask a question along the way, feel free to, and we'll certainly have time at the end. I would also mention that if there's any questions we can't answer today, or if anything comes up after the information session, we do publish frequently asked questions, so we would e-blast those and make those available to everyone. And to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Trayvon Perry, who's going to cover our program overview.
Good morning.
Okay. It's more important.
And if you haven't muted already, if you can mute to cut back on the background noise, would be appreciated. Sorry, Trayvon, go ahead.
Thank you. All right, so just starting off with the program overview. So CHFA is authorized to administer $10 million in tax credits. $1 million is set aside for workforce housing, and $2 million is set aside for supportive housing. And the tax credits are purchased by an eligible business firm. Historically, Eversource has purchased nearly all the credits. Must benefit low and moderate income households. There's a $500,000 maximum award per year per applicant, and no development may receive more than $1.5 million total over 3 consecutive years. Eligible applicants, So eligible applicants include a nonprofit corporation or a community development financial institution, meet CHAFA eligibility requirements, must be in compliance with HTCC, evidence of administrative capacity to carry out the project, and able to demonstrate that one of its purposes is the construction, rehabilitation, ownership, or operating of housing. Eligible uses. So we have workforce housing, which we will describe in more detail. Workforce housing development project, which we will describe a little later in the slides as well. Supportive housing rental. Applicants must be a qualified service provider. Revolving loan funds and general class. So definitions. So workforce housing means affordable housing for low and moderate income persons or families that include income, wage, or salaried workers in the municipalities where they work. Additional resources included in the definition, and Colette will be going in more detail on these a little later. And then workforce housing development project means the construction or substantial rehabilitation of dwelling units for rental housing, where A, 10% of the units are affordable housing, B, 50% of the units are rented to the workforce population designated by the developer in consultation with the municipality where such project is located, and C, 40% of the units are rented at market rate. Eligible costs. So generally hard and soft costs necessary for completion of the project. This can be acquisition, construction costs, A&E, environmental reports and remediation, financing fees, soft costs, and also reasonable developer fees and capitalized reserves. But we do like to see those allocated to other sources if feasible. And new this year, construction labor hours for employees of the nonprofit corporation that are attributable to HTCC assisted units are eligible costs. Eligible costs for revolving loan funds include down payment assistance, mortgage interest rate buydowns, reasonable and customary closing costs, rehabilitation costs, and revolving loan fund loaning to developers should work within the eligible cost parameters described in this section. And ineligible costs are staff salaries, operating and overhead, and commercial costs.
Great, thank you, Trayvon. So I will cover program updates and reminders. So in the guidelines, a few things that I wanted to point out, we don't have any, we don't have a lot of major changes this year. So I am going to cover some of the changes from last year just as reminders, or if you didn't apply last year. These are some of the newer changes to the program. So the general class now has priorities. So priority A is awarded ahead of priority B. So priority A is the non-LIHTC deals and priority B is LIHTC deals. In addition, for 2026, something that's new is that for 9% LIHTC housing developments, you must demonstrate that you were awarded under the 10% nonprofit set aside. For workforce housing, you're no longer required to have a program of assistance. This was removed from the procedures last year. And for workforce housing rental projects, 40% of the units must serve workforce housing households. So workforce housing development project is a new statutory eligible activity. This was included in the 2025 program as well, so I'm just reiterating it. It is a little bit nuanced, so I wanted to cover a little bit a time on the differences between the two definitions. I would also say that if you have any questions, please reach out. We can have a separate phone call if you're planning on applying under one of these definitions. We don't see a lot of projects come in under these definitions, so I'm going to cover it here, but definitely feel free to reach out separately and we can kind of chat about the definitions and applicability to your project. So the workforce housing development project, again, it's a specific eligible activity that was added to the statute, which is a project that is 10% affordable, 50% of the units would be designated for workforce housing, and 40% to market rate. So this specific eligible activity does not immediately qualify for the set aside. CHFA has our own definition of workforce housing, and that's those projects are what are eligible for the set aside. So if you're looking to do a workforce housing development project and qualify for the set aside, you would have to meet that set aside definition as well. Again, to kind of parse it out a little bit more, workforce housing for the set aside means affordable housing for low and moderate income persons or families that include wage or salaried workers in the municipalities where they work. And there are additional restrictions included in the definition, which is in the guidelines. Again, a workforce housing development project. This is that specific eligible activity. This is the construction or substantial rehab of dwelling units for rental housing, 10% affordable, 50% workforce. And I would point out when they say workforce, this is a population designated by the developer in consultation with the municipality where such a project is located. And then again, 40% market rate. So I'm not going to go into too much more detail. Again, I think it makes more sense if this is something that your project may be applying under, that you reach out if you have any questions. And then additionally in the HTCC guidelines, last year we kind of isolated the eligible costs into a particular section in the guidebook, so that's there. If you're applying for an additional award for the same project, you need to make sure you're providing a justification. That's part of the application materials, so we understand why the additional funds are necessary. For land contribution that is coming in as sponsor equity, you need to provide an as-is appraisal no older than 12 months. We're also now accepting the current assessed value or a settlement statement showing how much the nonprofit paid for the property. Any applicant committing to a low-income service period will be required to record a restriction on the property. A template or applicant certification is okay with the application, but the recorded restriction is required with closeout. And I would note for workforce housing or workforce housing development project, you must include additional restrictions to meet that criteria. In addition, I believe this was a change from 2025, but just to make sure people are aware, existing services at a project location, which was a points item, is replacing the OPM priority funding map, which no longer exists. So we are still providing points for existing sewer service, existing water service, a half-mile buffer to existing mass transit, and local 7-day-a-week bus service. And you'll need to provide the documentation for that since we don't have the map anymore. Mass transit is now defined in the guidelines, so you can see that definition there. It means a hub along the CT Fast Track Corridor or the Hartford Rail Line, Shoreline East, or Metro North's New Haven, New Canaan, Danbury, or Waterbury lines. Some updates and reminders from the CONAP. Again, this was a 2025 edition. We're now asking that you contact your asset manager if the property that you're looking to assist is in our portfolio, and just have them acknowledge that that they understand your intent to apply. With regards to the proposal narrative under 12.4, when you're writing your narrative, just make sure you have those instructions next to you. We do update that language, and you want to make sure that your narrative is addressing all the points that are being requested. In addition, the Workforce Housing Development Project provide a narrative describing how your project meets that criteria. For Exhibit 12.12, the gap justification form, just to reiterate that this is only required for deals with DOH and CHFA financing commitments, and it's not applicable for LIHTC only deals. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer and Leslie to cover the ACS review.
Great, thank you, Colette. So for ACS review requirements, again, nothing here has really changed since the last couple of years. So this is all pretty standard. The phase 1 environmental site assessment, it is required and needs to be submitted with the application. Phase 2 or phase 3, if applicable, the hazardous materials report, the SHPO letter, that's required after awards are awarded, so just keep that in mind. Building permits, and then Exhibit 12, 13. If permits are not provided with the application, you should indicate what permits will be required for the scope of work. Next slide. And Leslie, I think you were going to take the qualified development team.
Yes. So under the CONUP, we have the Exhibit 3.1, which talks about the qualified development team. We should have an architect who is licensed in the state of Connecticut, for which you will need to submit evidence with your application. The only exception is that if they are not required based upon the scope of work noted under the town and city building department. Those will not be required for HTCC. You will need to also provide evidence that that is not required within the application. Next slide, please. Going next to the GC, they must have a major contractor's license also under the state of Connecticut. Ensure that you do submit also evidence with your application. And again, the same exception applies that if the GC is not required regarding or based upon the scope of work noted, if the town and city do not require them to have a major contractor license, then it will not be required. However, a state of Connecticut home improvement license is acceptable. And again, also a Connecticut trade license. Next slide. If the Connecticut Building Code for 1 or 2 family dwellings does not require service of a licensed architect, CHFA will allow the work to be performed by a contractor that has an active Connecticut home improvement contractor license. Next slide. In regards to SHPO, we prefer to have the review project that have been awarded funding. Applicants will be required to contact SHPO once the HTCC awards have been announced. If you have already received a SHPO determination, please submit that with your HTCC application, or it will be required at a later date. Applicants must certify that SHPO requirements will be addressed as part of the scope of work. Next slide. For flood zoning location, we are urging you to ensure that you make an early determination of whether the project is located within either the 100 or 500-year floodplain, as this may impact your eligibility. New development activities located in a floodplain are not eligible. That's it, Jennifer.
Thanks, Leslie. So to go back a little bit to the phase 1 or phase 2. So the phase 1 is required for projects when the scope includes either new construction, if your project is going to include some kind of addition or bump out to existing buildings, or if there will be any new site utility work or any site work which will require excavation or work that will be disturbing existing soil. And this does include single family developments. Next slide. You may request an exemption if you can provide evidence that your project will be constructed on raw land without any hazardous impacts, or if you do have an older phase 1 report for the site and that you have retained ownership and can attest that the site does not contain any underground storage tanks, for example, for fuel or other potential contaminants, and that your property has not been used for any illegal dumping or any prior uses which may lead to soil or water contamination. Next slide. The phase 1 or the phase 2 environmental site assessment, it's not required for in-place rehab with no site work or any work outside of the building such as utility, sidewalk, parking. Hazardous material surveys, those are required for all existing buildings that are to be renovated and or demolished. And this would include asbestos testing, lead-based paint, lead in soil, lead in water, PCBs, radon, and a visual mold survey are all required. Next slide. And again, this is just a restatement: asbestos, lead-based paint, lead in soil, lead in water, PCBs, radon, and mold. Just be keeping in mind that older buildings will or could potentially contain a lot of these items. So if your building was constructed prior to the 1980s, those testing items would be required. If it was constructed in the 1990s or newer, that would not be required. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Colette for clarification. Next slide. The PCS, the project cost summary or exploded trade payment breakdown, those are not required. However, just keep in mind that some data input may be necessary in order to populate the development budget tab in the CONAP. Next slide. For the environmental certification, we do require a brief summary of the environmental concerns at the site, a description of the actions to be taken that will satisfy the state and local environmental requirements, and a certification that recommendations made by your licensed environmental professional will be addressed as part of the scope of work for the project. Next slide. And I guess right now we're going to pause for any questions on those technical items. But again, always feel free to reach out to me or Colette. A lot of this is really project specific. So if you do have any questions, we're always happy to help. But does anyone have any questions to ask right now? Okay,
Great.
great.
We'll move
Thank you,
on.
everybody.
And thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Leslie. And like I said, like Jennifer said, we understand a lot of this can be project specific, so you're welcome to reach out and ask questions about your project. Back to Trayvon. He's going to cover our application rating and ranking, our points worksheet updates for 2026.
Yep. So the application rating, the categories are project feasibility and readiness to proceed, affordability, applicant capacity / goals accomplished, livability initiatives, and compliance. So the permanent supportive housing, as we mentioned earlier, is a $2 million set aside, and the workforce housing is $1 million set aside. And then the balance of the funds go to first priority A, non-LIHTC, and then priority B, the LIHTC projects. Updates and reminders for the points worksheets. So there are 2 points worksheets, one for revolving loan fund and one for housing development. So 2026 point changes for the housing development. The opportunity map was removed, and new this year, we have the environmental reports completed. That's 2 points, and board of directors with 50% or more minority or women representation is 2 points. And then for the revolving loan fund, removal of the opportunity fund. Then we have 1 point added to blighted, abandoned, condemned site or building. So that's a total of 3 points. Board of directors with 50% or more minority women representation is 2 points. And then exhibit 14.8 is nonprofit board composition certification. Upload executive director certification for point consideration for that. Existing services replaces the priority funding area. So you must upload support documentation for this. Existing water / sewer service, half-mile buffer mass transit, it's defined in the guidelines, and a half-mile walking distance for a 7-day local bus. Low-income service period points, exhibit 14.6. You must certify that units will be restricted as proposed in the application for the time period applicant is committing to. A note, a recorded restriction evidencing application commitment for a low-income service period must be submitted with closeout materials. Neighborhood revitalization points, infill developments, 3 points, blighted, abandoned, condemned site or buildings, 2 points, and for revolving loan fund points, commit to loaning to at least one property that meets this criteria. Firm financial commitments, attach and label firm financial commitments with Exhibit 6.5 for point consideration. Be sure to provide documentation. An infill lot is defined as a parcel of vacant land located in an urban setting in an established neighborhood with access to existing public utilities and amenities. And development of housing on a blighted, abandoned, condemned site or building. The points will be provided if the applicant provides a letter from a town or city official attesting that the property meets this criteria.
Great, thank you, Trayvon. I appreciate it. We are going to move on to our application and HTCC process and timeline, and I'd like to introduce Stephen Norris.
Good morning. I'm going to some important deadlines. The SharePoint site request deadline is Monday, June 1st, 2026. Application due date is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026, no later than 4 p.m. The application process, you must use the 2026 version of the CONAP, submit by the due date that was just mentioned. Application that do not meet threshold requirements will not be considered, so please review the exhibit checklist in the CONAP. The application scored against the program criteria. Top scoring housing programs will be recommended for reservations until the pool of $10 million is exhausted, and announcements will be made in September. Approved applicants will have 60 days to provide executed business firm commitments as well. The business firm makes a HTCC payment or contribution to the award recipient for its housing program, and the award recipient provides evidence in the form of a notarized statement, also with a copy of the check and evidence that the funds are in a segregated account. And then CHAFA issues the tax credit voucher to the business firm. Going to the calendar for 2026, again, as I mentioned earlier, in June, SharePoint site requests must be received by June 1st, 2026. And then the applications are due to SharePoint on June 3rd, 2026 by 4 p.m., no later than that. September announcements will be posted on CHAFA's website of eligible housing programs to which business firms may contribute. In November, the contributing business firm applications are due to CHAFA, and uncommitted funds become available to the next highest ranking applicants who can secure business firm commitments. And then lastly, in December, applications for contributing business firms for uncommitted funds are due to CHAFA.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Okay, I'm going to go over maintaining compliance. So this is assuming you've received a HTCC award, and I wanted to cover some of the critical components of maintaining compliance. Be sure to obtain the necessary project approvals, whether that's zoning, building permits, etc. We do collect building permits from all of the applicants and awardees. Maintain the segregated bank account and accurate accounting records. Market the housing program. Be sure to meet the required housing program timeframes, which we'll talk about here shortly. Submit timely, accurate, and complete quarterly and closeout reports. This is very critical to avoid penalties. Seek approval for changes and modifications to the budget and the housing program. Participate in CHFA monitoring activities and avoid those penalties and non-compliance designations. So again, the HTCC, the segregated account, only the HTCC funds should be in that account. The funds should be used for approved HTCC expenditures only, and you need to report those expenditures quarterly. Follow your approved HTCC budget and request a modification if necessary. Follow your project timeline, track your closeout date, which is included in your reservation letter, report delays on quarterly reports, and reach out to us if you have any delays or any significant issues. Again, participate in monitoring activities, which is largely meeting us on site for visits. Here are some tips specifically for quarterly reports. Submit them on time through the HTCC Dropbox to avoid penalties. Be sure to use the most recent version of the report, which is on our website. Be sure to include all the required attachments. So we require bank statements for each month of the quarter, bank reconciliation, invoices, progress photos, building permits if they haven't been submitted already. Same with the funding commitments. And now we also require an advance detail. Update the form each quarter, including the percentage complete and narrative sections. Sometimes we see those aren't updated and it can be a little confusing, so just be mindful of that when you're updating it. Again, follow your approved budget, request modifications, and discuss any changes with CHFA. Again, know your closeout date. Again, there's penalties for late submissions of closeouts, so you want to be sure to keep track of that. For housing development projects, that is 3 years from your reservation letter, and for revolving loan funds, that's 3 years from the receipt of funds. Be sure to contact us early regarding project delays so that we can assess with you meeting the closeout date and discuss any actions that we need to take with regards to that deadline. Submit your closeout materials by the deadline. Take a look at the closeout checklist a few months leading up to your closeout date. There are some documents that you'll need to submit as part of that closeout package, so you want to make sure that your project can be closed out. Make sure that you are completing the housing program that you propose in your application. We do go through your points commitments at closeout to make sure that you've followed up with your application commitments. So with regards to the closeout deadline, this is kind of a hard deadline for us. It is in our procedures. So failure to submit a final completion documents within 3 years and 90 days from your reservation letter will result in ineligibility of the award for 2 consecutive funding rounds of the HTCC program. We do consider extension requests, but it's important that prior to submitting your application, you're considering whether this application that you're applying for, if it is ready to proceed and whether it can be completed within the time frame. So we're asking you to make that assessment before you apply for the funds. We will consider closeout extensions, or we may consider them, but you'll want to notify us early when you're doing that, when you're experiencing delays, so that we can have a conversation about that. And it's your responsibility to track that deadline and seek extensions when you need it. Don't wait 30 days before the deadline. It is possible for us to approve a closeout extension, but we may determine the nonprofit is out of compliance for failure to meet the original closing deadline. In this case, the nonprofit will be considered out of compliance until it's been submitted and closed. A compliance determination will be made at CHFA's sole discretion. If the extension is denied, the nonprofit is not eligible to apply for 2 years per the procedures. And up next, back to Stephen to cover SharePoint, which is the website for submitting applications in the consolidated application.
All right, I think going to SharePoint, the next slide. So what is SharePoint? SharePoint is used to submit a consolidated application to CHFA and DOH. It is a Microsoft-based product that will create a website for each application, enabling users to access, manage, and share application information. And the screenshot below is the main page, and to the left is the list of items, which we'll go into in the future slides in this section. Sharing the site, SharePoint allows collaboration, which means multiple team users can work on the application simultaneously. This allows multiple users to assign and complete tasks, update a single consolidated application workbook, and upload files as necessary. What to do to request a SharePoint site? You're going to email application requests at chfa.org, providing the following information: the funding round, which in this case would be HTCC, application name, which is a project name, the company name, which is the applicant, primary contact name, email, and phone number, and also email addresses of additional users who need access. For further information,
Sorry,
Yep.
sorry,
oh, no
Stephen.
problem. For further information and instructions for the request, you can also go to the general SharePoint web app instructions, which is located on our website. Now I'm good. How to get access to SharePoint. Again, each application request will require separate email requests, so do not combine multiple requests within a single email. Also, if there's instances, if a hybrid financing structure is proposed, there would be one email requesting a SharePoint for the 9% portion, another email for the 4% portion, for example, using LITech. Allow 2 to 3 business days for websites to be created. When the site is ready, you will receive an email with access to the application specific website. A Microsoft account will have to be created for each email address used in SharePoint. And again, you can reference the general SharePoint web app instructions on our website. Microsoft has implemented enhanced security measures that restrict group members from sharing the site with external users. So again, to request an additional user who needs access, an email request containing user information must be sent to applicationrequests@chafa.org. Now, using SharePoint in the portal, you will find a description of the funding round. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, there's the quick access buttons on the left side. The first one being the task list. The task list. It shows the list of tasks associated with the application. Tasks can be assigned to specific team members and be given due dates. Provides a time of activity prior to application submission date, a timeline of activity. And then once all items are checked off, the application's website will lock and your application will be submitted. So you can't make any further changes once the application is submitted. So that's important to keep in mind. The next item is the consolidated application workbook that can be found in SharePoint for download to your PC, but it can also be downloaded from the CHAFA DOH websites. Must be downloaded from either source, filled out, and then uploaded to SharePoint when completed. So as I mentioned, I think a little bit earlier, you must use the current version, which is 2026 of the Khan app. Prior versions will not be accepted. File uploads, the section of the website specifically for file uploads, which you can upload multiple files at once and place them into section folders. There is a drag and drop feature available for convenience. Upload items can be removed if done incorrectly or can be replaced. Please keep the file name short and relevant. Do not repeat project names in the file path. Avoid unnecessary spaces or hyphens, and also please abbreviate consolidate application as CONAP. For the section folders, they are aligned with sections of consolidate application. So please upload files to the relevant section folders in SharePoint. Also within SharePoint is a reference library. This section includes several templates of forms that are to be completed and submitted with each application as applicable to your project. Then there is the help section. This is available to walk users through the steps to use each section of the SharePoint website. It's accessed through the menu in the upper left section of the home screen. And also by clicking help links in each section description as well. And then for submitting the application, it is recommended to upload documents as they are completed to avoid any potential submission errors due to attempts to upload at the site at the time of cutoff. CHAFA will not review any uploads to the SharePoint site until after the application submission date and time. Nothing submitted via email will be considered as part of the application unless specifically requested by CHAFA or DOH. To submit your application and lock your website, mark all the items in the task list as complete. So that's very important. And then as a reminder, the due date is 4 p.m. June 3rd, 2026.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. All right, we're kind of getting towards the end. You'll be hearing some things repeated. Obviously, these are just kind of some final reminders. Application preparation tips. Make sure you're using the latest version of the Khan app. Again, we've said it several times, but it is critical. Follow the exhibit checklist in the Khan app. Read the application to clearly understand what is required. If there is a T item and the checklist and the exhibit checklist, that's a threshold item, and applications can be removed from consideration if a threshold item is missing. Identify your long lead items that are needed, such as your phase 1 and your hazmat reports. Get clarification on what ACS items are required or not required based on your housing program. When preparing your exhibits, refer closely to the instructions for each item. Make sure your responses address what is being asked for in each item. As mentioned, we do make some adjustments each year to clarify requirements, so be sure to review CONUP instructions. When preparing evidence of financial commitments for your application, be sure to refer to the HTCC guidelines for what documentation is acceptable. Number 7, don't wait till the last minute to submit your application. Give yourself time to address questions or issues with your submission. Number 8, consider your project's readiness to proceed and whether it can be reasonably expected to be completed within the timeframes, the required timeframes. Okay, we are getting towards the end here. Our resources, in general, these are all the resources for the HTCC program. We have our CHFA procedures, which are approved by our board of directors. We have links to the income limits and the single family sales limits, CHFA policy statements, our CHFA HTCC webpage. That's where we will not only post these slides, but the guidelines are there as well. If there's any FAQs that we publish, we'll e-blast those and we'll also put them on our website. The HTCC webpage is also where you can find our quarterly report forms, our closeout forms, and again, we'll get these slides up there soon. Here are some contacts. So if you have specific questions about SharePoint, you can send them to applicationrequest@chfa.org. And you're more than welcome to email me directly on any questions. I can make sure we get the right person if I can't help you. So feel free to reach out. And here's my contact information. Here's Jennifer's contact information. But again, you can filter everything through me and we'll make sure we get to the right person. And let's see. So that is all that we have for the formal presentation. I don't know if we had any comments come in on the chat, Deb, or anything, or if anybody has any questions that they want to take advantage of this time to ask.
I have not seen any so far. I did put the link to the slides in the chat. It is, the slides have been posted on our website.
Awesome.
Colette, this is Helen. The chat on my computer has been turned off to external people. I don't know if everybody else has the same message, but that's what
I
it
have
says
the
in my
same
chat.
message. It says
Me-
chat isn't available.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
All right, so I can pull up our website and show you where they're posted, and if for some reason you have a hard time getting to the slides, just email me directly. But in the meantime, that may be why we don't have any questions. So if you have questions now, please feel free to ask them if it would benefit the group, or if it's an individual question, you're welcome to reach out after. I'm just going to pull up the website here too while we're waiting, see if we have any questions. So I'm just going to show you guys how to get onto the HTCC web page from our website. So chfa.org. The way that I usually access the HTCC is to go to developers, and then we have tax credit programs, and then here's the HTCC link. So everything is on here. We literally just posted the slides, so I don't know if it's going to show up on, if it's refreshed. Ah, here they are. So they're here. They're here on the webpage, and this is also where the guidelines are, the quarterly report forms, the closeout checklists. If we have any FAQs, we'll put them here as well. But this is kind of our catch-all on our website for HTCC. All right, well, hearing no questions, I hope that was helpful. Best of luck. Again, keep in mind the deadline of the 3rd, and if you have specific questions, you're welcome to reach out. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.